Welcome, everybody, to the Witness Underground podcast. We're talking today about Witness Underground, the documentary, and we're specifically interviewing Gary Alt during our Kickstarter campaign. This is a Kickstarter special episode. If you go to witnessunderground.com, it's the last couple days. We end Friday at midnight. Anthony Matheny is now pointing at Gary and or the campaign link that might be in the episode. Go there, check out our campaign, support it if you can. Now we're in a stretch goal, so it's super exciting. So we actually got the minimum funding that we needed to accelerate this project, and this is an opportunity to support the artists that are in the film directly. All the funding is now compensating the artists, so please go and help us hit our stretch goal and support the artists in the film. Gary Alt, how are you doing today?
Good. How you doing?
Doing good.
Good.
And Anthony's going to help co-host the episode today. Thanks for coming, Anthony. Anthony's a co-producer on our film.
Okay. Well, great job.
Great connection.
Yeah.
So, Gary, as I understand it, you are a blues artist. You've given me a number of songs. We're going to check those out today. Tell us about your history with music and this religion.
Okay. Wow, that's a big question. It's two different things that do intersect. First of all, I was not raised as a witness. I didn't come in until I was 15 years old, and it was all on my own. It wasn't because of my parents or anything. It was just because I was looking for answers to something, and I thought I found them. But I was into music as far back as I can remember. My parents' record collection, which was really sparse. My mom had a lot of 78s in a closet, like a lot of Mozart operas and stuff like that, but we had no way to play them. So their actual LPs were fairly limited. So I just remember Chopin. There was a Van Cliburn album called My Favorite Chopin. I just ate that alive. It was just such a great album. And then I think most houses had the Tchaikovsky suites from 3 ballets, and everybody called it the Nutcracker album because that was the main one. So I listened to that stuff incessantly, and they had a lot of other stuff in their collection that was horrible. I thought, like Ferranti and Teicher, if you ever heard of them, just this piano duet that just destroyed things. Made what we call wallpaper or dentist music or elevator music. I know I always hated that stuff. Maybe from an early age, I recognized it as being really phony. But anyway, then I grew up with the AM radio basically. So Motown and the Beatles were really, really big for me because I was that age. It kind of dates me, I guess. But, whatever pop was on the radio I liked at the time, and I sort of outgrew it. But I never outgrew Motown or the Beatles. To me, it's always vibrant. And wasn't until, I don't know, 5th grade or something like that I took drums in the school band. They offered, whatever you want to play, and I just took drums. But that gave me exposure to the whole idea of playing in a band with a leader. And, they put me in the orchestra. I was in the chorus. They wanted me to do everything because if you show some ability, they want to use you, And then I eventually started guitar playing, didn't take lessons, but, I just sort of taught myself. And by then I was really, really listening to, I was always into the Beatles, but I started to listen to Eric Clapton. I discovered right around the time Cream broke up in '69. But I went back to the earlier recordings with John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. And to this day, I'll say that to me is like the most important record in the world. For me, it was anyway, the Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton. So I learned, it introduced me to the blues, but it was kind of an indirect way because the blues is an American product, right? Which white America didn't even know about, I don't think. It was just, those people in the Chitlin circuit,
How long do you think that period was where it was sort of not white people music?
Like its origin? Well, the blues was really like from the 20s on, I guess. It was really... I really can't think of any white artists that were doing the blues. There were people playing jazz, and which can have a connection with the blues, but
my dad had a pretty extensive Aerosmith collection, and him and I got really into the blues. But I feel like that might have been one of the introductions to
probably, yeah. Well, it was the same with me because what it was that when that music went over to England, where they don't have the problem with race like we do. There's racism everywhere, but not like in America. It was just ridiculous, really super immature. And these white boys, like 8, 10, 12-year-old boys, like the Rolling Stones and Eric Clapton and whoever else, were listening to all these old blues records, and they played what they played, and that's how I heard it. So I heard blues from England And that's
Wow.
how I went back and discovered Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and all those guys. And then of course rock and roll just came from the blues, so it's all black music. That's the thing. I don't think people realize it. Most of our greatest music in this country, in my opinion, is African American in nature.
Jimi Hendrix is huge
so
for me. He's got some like great blues songs. Jimi Hendrix, I absolutely love Jimmy, but he's I almost attribute him to like heavy metal, punk rock origins. Definitely huge blues influence, and obviously he's like the king of rock. And even noise, like he was doing insane things, and so he almost like birthed all these genres, and it's definitely not right.
Yeah, he shaped it. I mean, anybody could get feedback. It's pretty easy. You just put it up too loud, and let it go. But he shaped it, and he made it musical. He was really amazing. And you hear what I hear in a lot. I mean, I'll just throw a name out there. The name Albert King, who's a great blues guitarist. You hear Albert King in just about anybody that knows what he's doing. And you hear a lot of it in Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan's playing. So anyway, that's what I got into, and so then I took piano lessons, and somewhere when I was in the middle of my piano lessons, this is the first time I was actually taking drum lessons were musical instruction, but not like with a melodic instrument. Somewhere in the middle of my piano lessons is when I got exposed to the Witnesses with the guy that was my best friend. Actually, I knew him since the age of 3, and but I didn't know he was a Witness actually, because he didn't, it wasn't his choice. It was his mother's choice, so he was like half in, half out, and now he's totally out, by the way. He's been out for like much, much longer than me. But anyway, I started studying, and I never left music behind. I realized pretty early on that I was not going to make a career out of it the way I thought I would originally when I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and I watched Jimi Hendrix burning his guitar at Monterey, and and I wanted to. I never wanted to burn my guitar, but I wanted to do that stuff on stage. But you realize that it means touring, and you can't have a normal family life. And even though I didn't have a family yet, I was still a teenager. I knew I didn't want that lifestyle. So it had nothing to do with the Witnesses turning that off. What I did was I kept my hand in, and I thought maybe I could be a studio musician. Because you could just back in those days that was a fairly viable thing. And I visited certain studios and things like that. But in the meantime, I kept playing, writing songs with friends in school. But of course, getting more deeply into the JW lifestyle. And so I eventually, I don't know, I guess at some point in I want to say the 80s, maybe late 80s or something like that, I just ended up selling everything I had, all my instruments except my piano. I always kept my piano mainly because my kids were playing it.
Why did you sell everything?
I just got so frustrated with it. Because I want to be at a certain level. I don't want to regress and wake up one day and find out I don't know how to play anything anymore. I don't have time to teach myself like I did when I was 12. When you're 12 years old, you're a sponge. You're in learning mode. You got nothing but time. You can learn anything. When as you get older, it's a little more difficult. So I just thought I was getting really discouraged with it, and I don't know. For whatever reason, I just thought maybe I should just not worry about this anymore. But very quickly, my then wife got me an acoustic guitar as an anniversary gift, because she realized that I can't live without. That's impossible. So as soon as she did that, I started writing songs, because I thought I got to do something with this. I got to do something. And I never really wrote songs seriously. Every once in a while I did one. I wrote with a friend of mine back in high school who was actually a very good writer, but I just wrote the occasional tune, But now I was like, now I'm really gonna, do something with this. I started out making songs for the Witnesses, actually.
How does that work?
Well, I wrote, there's an album called Alien's Heart. Some people may have heard of it. It's embarrassing now, but I was proud of it at the time, because I did the whole thing. I wrote, recorded, I engineered, I did everything, and I sold it through Carl Stoops' catalog, if you're familiar with that. I don't know if they're still in business, but they sell like, they're in Missouri, I think, and they sell like service supplies, like, I don't know.
Going door to door as a
yeah. So like book bags and stuff like that. So I
think I did hear about that back in the day.
Yeah. So I sold it out. I sold out every. I think the initial order is 1,000. It was at the time, and I sold them out.
Okay. So all those Jehovah's Witnesses that are listening to this, I know there's so many of you. You can sell your Jehovah's Witness records through this Jehovah's Witness magazine out of Missouri. So go check out the Stoops magazine.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it took some convincing. It really took some convincing. When I did a second album, which is called "It's About the Kids," and that did very, very well. But I sold it mainly through eBay. I don't know. I mean, that's just what I did because I didn't have any kind of a web presence, and I was like, Stoops wouldn't take it because of a comment that I made on the liner notes that they thought was going to create. Basically, I had recorded some background noise at the Kingdom Hall, just people talking as part of a song. And I mean, it was all super, super positive JW directed stuff, like all, just for JWs, not Kingdom Melodies or something horrible like that. And I just said that parts of whatever the song was were recorded at the Kingdom Hall. And they said, "Oh, no, we can't do that because that associates the Kingdom Hall with recorded music, and there's got to be royalties." And I said, "Okay, forget about it." So.
Whoa.
And then
you think that they would be excited about it? Like that doesn't.
Yeah. But the first album was
community.
Right. I mean, the first one I did, which was it was a CD, but it took some real convincing for them to even put it in their catalog. I had to send them tapes and assure them that listen to the lyrics, and they got excited about it. They said, "Wow, this is really great. These are really good lyrics, and you can hear everything, and whatever." And so they put it in there, and it was in there for years. I don't know what's going on with it now, but and then I made a third one, which I finally decided I was going to use electric guitar, even with some distortion, some drums. So it was anywhere from like folk music to rock music and some blues. But again, it was for the JW community, and it went nowhere. And I don't know if it's because they heard some, guitar solos with distortion, or I'm not sure what the problem was, but I know my circuit.
That's where the devil is. The devil's in the distortion. If you turn the knob, that's when the devil and the demons can enter.
Yeah, we all know that, right? Yeah. But my circuit overseer had a copy of it, and there was one song in particular he loved. He just, he would sing it when he saw me, So I don't know, but I remember getting comments from people, apparently JWs, that would say, like they'd see that I had a website or that I was on eBay or whatever, and they'd say, do your elders know you're doing this?
Yeah, okay, that's a funny thing, right? Like when there was a time where Jehovah's Witnesses had a website called jw-media.org, and it had like
yes,
it was their official website, and I would tell witnesses like, "Oh, have you been to the Jehovah's Witness website?" And they're like, "That's apostate." And I was like, "No. Like their religion has a website." And they're like, "You're insane. You can't stop talking. I can't listen to this. You're an apostate." And I was like, "What are you talking about? This is our faith." And they're like, "No, the internet is evil." And now they worship a URL and they only talk about their website.
Right. Yeah.
Bowing down to a website.
Yeah.
It's so crazy
to
have like, how do you have that switch? Because there was a time where even social media, they would be like, now, brothers and sisters, we've heard people have Facebook accounts, and they wouldn't even say, they're like Face Space and My Book. They're trying to be like, we can't actually say that the website is bad or you can't use it, but we're going to get you, you can't use those. It's off limits. And now it's like,
right.
they have 50,000, 100,000 people in like their special Facebook groups, and they're like hashtag living the best life ever or something.
Yeah.
It's like how did they go to do the exact opposite of what they railed against? The internet was evil, and you having any kind of presence on the internet was why you got banned. It's like so ridiculous now to think about that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I was at Bethel for a while in the 80s, and in the computer
Barbara
department.
Anderson was telling me that you had a presence there, and you met her there. Is that right?
Yeah. She came. I went in 81, and I think she came in 82 or 83 or something like that.
Okay.
I remember seeing her and her husband, and I think the thing that really popped out of my mind was somehow I knew like very quickly that their two sons were their two sons. I knew those guys a little better than I knew Barbara and Joe. I had lunch with them once in a while, and I was like, oh wow. I mean, I don't know too many. I can only think of two other examples, or probably more, of an actual family at Bethel.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting.
I don't mean just temporary workers or working on a construction project. I mean, back in those days, you were either a Bethelite or you're not there. There was no commuters, So so that was interesting, and so we overlapped a bit. I know her a lot better now than I did then. I mean, it was sort of just, because you run into people all the time at Bethel. It doesn't necessarily mean you know everybody like you know your best friends. But yeah, I had no idea what she was up to. I didn't know she worked on the Awake magazine. I didn't even know that. I knew a lot of the people that she worked with, like Cyril Wallasino and Harry Poloyan, and a lot of people in the writing department. But anyway,
propaganda machine.
Yeah.
I actually met Barbara. We've been emailing this year for the first time, and then during this campaign this month, she reached out to me, and she has a special program on the 6 screens that she does every other week. So she has like a 2-hour window, and she bumped an important interview on human rights that she was doing in Kazakhstan, which is super interesting to have us on to talk about this campaign. The Saturday before the Be Free 23 thing in DC. So that was really cool because I got to meet her, and then she bumped Joe on. She's like, Joe, you got to come on. There's this cool like filmmaker and project that's happening, and we got a couple of the authors in on. But it was cool to like she's so cool. And she wrote a book, so I'm like excited to like work with her and get to know her more. Yeah, she's telling me, she's like, you got to get on Gary Alt's show, and then she shared the interview that you did with us on her page, which is really cool. So she's like, yeah, Gary used to do music things at Bethel, so I want to know a little bit more about that.
Okay.
You were just talking about Bethel. So, I mean, talk about what you were going to say. You're in the, what department were you in?
I was in the computer department. Oh, yeah. I guess the point I was going to make just real quick is that I learned, I don't know, right around the time that I started went to Bethel, that there was a lot of brushback within the governing body and within Bethel in general, especially the top brass, so like factory overseers, about the whole idea of using a computer for anything, because they felt it was like, well, you know how at Bethel they used to they had like generators. They had it set up so that if they needed to pull a switch, they could be completely independent and not dependent upon the electric company, not dependent upon anybody which is absurd. I mean, obviously you still have to be incorporated, and
they're like a post-apocalyptic ready printing company.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's so interesting.
Whatever. Yeah, but that was their idea. Is that we went independent with printing back in the 20s or whatever it was, and everybody said we're crazy, and we did it, and so we don't need the world for anything. So with computers, well, they got an IBM computer, they leased it, and they ended up getting a bunch of IBM computers, and it was really Grant Suter was the brains behind that. He was a governing body member that just realized we need to do this, and they couldn't have, the year that I've completed the shipping and inventory system. They made the realization once it was implemented that they never, ever, ever would have gotten all the yearbooks and all the bound volumes and all that stuff out if it wasn't for the system, because they'd grown too big already. So all the people that were like, denying reality and saying, no, we can't use computers, it's too much dependence upon the world, they were proved wrong, Yeah. But it's
also if you want to do that, it's like go full Amish, like don't live in the biggest city on the planet with, across from Manhattan, across the water.
Right.
Like they put themselves there for a specific reason, and it wasn't to be away from society. It was to be closer to it.
Oh yeah. That's why Russell moved them there. Absolutely, yeah, because that's where they wanted. I mean, it was really important in those days to be near a shipping port. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Anyway, but as far as music at Bethel, I mean, I was still doing music and everything, and just not being I learned very early on that you should. It's not wise to make your business everybody else's business, like make them knowledgeable about what you're doing. Doesn't mean you're hiding things or anything, which is what actually happens a lot. But it just means, I'll just give you an example. Back when I was still before I went to Bethel, I remember I had a Jimi Hendrix. Speaking of Jimi Hendrix, I had a Jimi Hendrix album on my turntable, and it was actually the Monterey album, the Monterey Pop Festival album,
like live.
Yeah, so one side was all Jimi Hendrix, the other side was Otis Redding. And of course I love Otis Redding, but I mean, I was playing the Jimi Hendrix side almost constantly. So this elder happens to come over, and I don't remember why exactly, but he comes over to my apartment, and he says, play me some of the music you listen to, and I kind of was like, it just seemed disingenuous to me. Like, what the heck does he want? He goes, and I said, well, what do you want me to play? He goes, just whatever you have on there. Let's just listen to that. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, let me just flip it over. I'll play the B-side. He goes, no, play those. I was like, no, I'll play the B. So I played Otis Redding, and it's like, he's like, oh, that's okay. I think that he must have heard something from somebody that Gary plays really loud acid rock, which is a ridiculous term. The whole reason it exists, I mean, Jimi Hendrix was not acid rock, but that's everybody always thought it was. But yeah, so anyway, I learned early on to not be super, even with regard to like sex between you and your wife, the things that you do, if it's not crazy or harmful or degrading or anything like that, there's certain things that are verboten. So don't go broadcasting this to people in the service group. It's just use your head, like, so that people get in trouble for things. I'm just always amazed that it even happens, But so anyway, when I went to Bethel, I had the same record collection with all the Jimi Hendrix and Jethro Tull and Cream and all that horrible Santana, all that evil devil oriented stuff. And I hear story. Well, this is around when backward masking had become an issue. That was like a really big thing for a while. And I probably had a couple of yeah, that's what they call it. I forget which. I think it's backward masking is a legitimate technique, whereas back masking is, I get them mixed up. But one of them is supposedly the devil has gotten into these records, and if you play them backwards, there are satanic messages in them. That was a really big thing for a while I was at Bethel. And I realized this is the hokiest nonsense I ever heard. I don't even, I'll argue about it all day long with somebody I trust, but other than that, I'm just not going to talk about it. So I remember I actually put like a little warning sign on my record collection, which was behind a closed cabinet door, because I heard all these stories of housekeepers and I know that these are true because my wife was a housekeeper and a lot of our friends were, that would actually turn people in. They called Bethel office and say, I was cleaning, a brother's room in Towers building 10th floor, and I found a Victoria's Secret catalog or it has nothing to do with music, but a record with a really questionable demonic looking cover. And the next thing you know, you'd be hauled into somebody's office. So I just put a sign on my record collection. It says, please do not touch. And if you're stupid enough to go ahead and go through my record collection, then shame on you. I ask you not to touch it. It's my personal stuff. It's not out so that you need to clean it, So and then when they started the album burning stuff, like they had people actually throwing albums away in the dumpsters. I went through the dumpsters to see if there's anything, and I'll never forget. I got the Santana 3 album that way. It's like, I've never had that in my collection. I love Santana.
Is it more or less demon possessed if it came out of a cult member's like post demon throwaway moment?
Yeah, but that's the way I always was. I was like, I don't believe a lot of I always believe the doctrines. But a lot of these implications, about, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like, I went to concerts at churches, not all the time, but if it was a concert I wanted to see, I don't care where it is. What's the difference whether it's out at an amphitheater or it's in the basement of a church? I mean, what are you going to get, the Catholic cooties on you or something? So anyway, that was my thing. But I got into the music at Bethel very early on because they have what they call family night.
Okay.
Which is it's like a variety show that they put on, by members of the family for the whole family.
Yeah. And
there's a committee with Dan Sudlick, who's one of the governing body members. He's one of the people on the committee. And so I started out the first time. A guy I worked with asked if he knew that I was a piano player, and I played classical music mostly. And he wanted to do a 4-person, 8-hand, 2-piano version of Franz Liszt's Second Hungarian Rhapsody. I said, yeah, wow. Absolutely. I love it, So that's what I did. And from that point on, I was on every family night for the whole time I was there, playing piano. I played flute one time, just like a little brief part, but wow. I never acted in any of the skits. I was just playing the piano, So I kept my hand in that way. I wasn't really playing guitar too much in those days because you really couldn't have an amp in your room. It wasn't even allowed. You could have a guitar in the closet, but you couldn't have an amp, or you couldn't use an amp, put it that way.
Just for like after hours noise or something?
Yeah, for any time, because it's either people are going to be sleeping or studying or it's during work time or whatever. Mm. You just couldn't use an amp. You weren't allowed to. You could have a guitar, but even then, I know guys that would go into a stairwell or something and they play their guitar and sing because I don't know, their roommate couldn't take it or something. So it was kind of an oppressive environment in terms of music. I remember going down to what they call personal storage, which was in the 30 building, which is, it was the old Squibb building where Gilead was back when they were still in Brooklyn. And that's where my personal storage was. And that's where I kept my amps. And I remember going down there with my Les Paul, and I just ripped it to shreds. I was just wailing. I'm playing it, not super, super loud, but loud enough that you could hear it all over the building, And, once in a while someboody would walk by and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I just say, "Yeah, I'm just playing a little bit, So what is it? And they're so foreign to them. They're like, "What? Yeah, those music sounds strange." I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of the blues, really." But
You're
a version
shredding
of
metal.
Yeah, well, it was kind of before. I guess it was the days. I mean, early to mid '80s. I guess metal. Well, Van Halen's and Def Leppard started in the late '70s, but
Yeah.
I guess that was early metal. I don't know.
It's interesting, yeah, because like my aunt and uncle on my not in my Jehovah's Witness side, on the other side, they were super into Van Halen, Def Leppard. They had all the '80s hair metal band posters, and my aunt was always, she's like 10 years older than me, so like a bigger sister in a way, and she's like, check out the Doors, check out this album, check out that record. And then it was like that was the hardest, most badass thing in the world was '80s hair metal. But like looking back now, it's like, well, they were actually singing a lot of like love ballads and really catchy, smooth licks and choruses and sing-alongs, and mostly they're just singing about love and partying, which is all pretty benign stuff when it comes down to like what people think of metal. Like now that those are just like classic rock songs, or like people like, oh, it's like reminds me of my childhood because that's what my parents listened to, But back then it was like so badass to like listen to.
Oh yeah. Well, everything's like that. I mean, I remember when they came out with the term soft rock, and that basically was like James Taylor and stuff like that, which I always thought of as like Americana acoustic singer-songwriter. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I think like even Led Zeppelin is considered like, I don't know, soft rock now or something. I'm not even sure what soft rock means. It's like smooth. It's like light jazz. What does that even mean? It's an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense. But it's just kind of amazing how, like, I loved Black Sabbath in the '70s. I absolutely loved Black Sabbath. I was really into Sabbath and Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin.
Great.
Yeah, I still love them. And I got rid of all my Zeppelin.
Blew my mind.
Oh, was it?
When the Levee Breaks blew my mind as a kid. I was always putting on that record because we had like all Aerosmith and all Led Zeppelin vinyl growing up, and I would just be like, I would just put that on repeat. It was like, boom the needle back. I want to listen to that. Like a super big open sound that they have.
Yeah, and it was and I came to really love that anything that was like plodding and just sort of muddy. And when the Levee Breaks, it was essentially a blues kind of song, but it's like, dude, I mean, it's slow as hell. And it just has so much space in it to just, What happened was I eventually felt like I outgrew a lot of that stuff. I kept all my Cream records and Hendrix and the Beatles and a lot of this stuff, but I got rid of Mountain and Zeppelin.
Yeah, we had Mountain too. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I loved Mountain, and I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't. Like I remember there was a couple of Led Zeppelin songs in particular, like Dazed and Confused is one I always remember. That when I listened to it, I would be like jumping out of my skin. I was like, I don't even know what to do. I am so turned on and motivated by this music to do what I don't know, but it just really thrilled me to listen to it. And one day I was listening and I'm like, and this is like after I had been baptized, probably. I didn't make a conscious effort to weed out my collection of anything anybody considered demonic. I just was listening to it one day and I thought, I'm just not interested in this anymore. It just doesn't fit my personality anymore. So I got rid of it all. But years later, I got it back. And I don't remember when it was in the '90s or the aughts or something like that. I said, that was a mistake. That was stupid.
Owning art.
Yeah, so now I've got everything. I've got the live albums and all that stuff. But
I actually had a similar thing, but all my CDs I'd spent probably like, I had like extra $50 a month that I could spend on art or music, and I would buy CDs back in the '90s, and started in like '91 or something, with like one of those CD send in the mail things, and then like all my stuff, including all my burns and all my like MP3, like my mixtapes, mix CDs, all got stolen out of my car. Weirdly, like it was the cousin of one of my best friends in my band who actually stole all of our stuff, and he found it like in a pile of like stolen goods from cars in like a cousin's garage like years later, and he's like, check it out, I got all your records back. And I was like, just keep it as a nostalgic. But this is like 12 years later. But I ended up like, now I've been going to thrift stores the last like 7 years. And like every time I go in, I'm like, okay, CD section, that's the most important thing. I'll like find some gem that I used to own and I buy it again. So now I have like 150 CDs again of like the stuff I absolutely loved. Because it's actually that era was like the last era of music for like the '90s. People who actually had physical media. And it's my generation who's like dumping that music. So I'm like, because I got Spotify. I'm like, No, but the physical art is awesome. I want it. It's like I almost have a similar thing as you. Like, no, I went back and I bought all that art again, plus extra.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's amazing though how it does change though. Like I mentioned Black Sabbath and it was like the heaviest, grungiest, just like I shouldn't use the word grunge because that identifies a different era, but the muddiest, just plodding, heavy thing I could imagine. I just couldn't I put the headphones on maximum volume, probably destroyed my hearing as a result. But
Was
and
that what
I
destroyed
just
your
couldn't.
faith? Is
Yeah,
that what
yeah.
took you to the devil, Gary?
No. The society took me to the devil, actually. But but it's now I listen to it, and there's one Sabbath song that I still really think is great, and I always try to play it live, and I can never find anybody that knows it. But it for the most part, that stuff it just amazes me. Like Ozzy Osbourne, the way he sings is so opposite of what became of especially death metal with the growlers. Um, he's almost got like a sweet melodic voice compared to these guys that are just like really gritty. And it just and I think this is what we thought was the heaviest thing imaginable back in the 70s.
Yeah. And
It's
now it's
almost like
like
is
feel
that
good
light rock?
classic.
What is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So now what got me out was a different thing. I mean, it was no, they did it to me. So no, I just got kind of uh well, I was an elder for quite a while, and I saw how goofy things were. I still believed all the doctrines 100%. I mean, this is before the overlapping generation thing, but I believed everything. But I always knew that the way we treat people and the way we try to force people to do things and control things that's just not right. I just knew it wasn't right. And but what it took me a really long time to realize is that is pretty much the way the organization wants it. I always thought that where I was, because I moved to a congregation up in the upper northwest regions of New Jersey. It's very, very redneck. And I just thought, well, this is the way they are. It's okay. That's all right because they're still in the truth, but they just kind of different version of it. And my job is to work with them and see if we can kind of bring sanity to the thing. And I had so much brushback, to use the word lightly. I mean, it was a lot more than brushback. It was actually very difficult, very, very emotionally wrenching point in my life. But I finally realized after I wasn't an elder anymore, when I really started looking at the magazines, that we're always kind of vague about certain things. Like people would say, "Oh, they told us to sell our stuff in 1975." Well, not exactly, but you can say that they did because of the way they would say, you know, some brothers have sold their things and bought trailers and gone to Pioneer. Isn't that a fine example of a good way to use our time? So they never said that's what you should do, but they kind of did. But they
And it
left it so
elevated it.
that yeah, they left it so they could always back off and say we never said that because they actually didn't, but they actually kind of did. Anyway, I started to look at the magazines differently. I'd say, well, why is it that they're so worshipful of the governing body and the elders in this congregation? And I thought it was anomalous. I thought it was just us, maybe a few other
Mm.
congregations here and there. And I started to realize the more I looked at it that this is pretty much going on everywhere, where they're basically virtually worshiping the elders, not as individuals, but as a body. They become perfect, basically,
Mhm. Yeah,
and the
there's
governing
something
body.
about like the way that they present to the public is
Mhm.
one version of what they want the
Right,
public to see. The way they present themselves to the people in the religion is a completely different thing.
right,
And they do that, what you said, in like subtle effects. Sure, it gets the conversation started and flowing, and people like to tell stories, and then it becomes this cultural norm within the in group. And then they're like, "That's not us. That's just how the people act or how individuals act." But they're engineering it, and I think they're conscious of that. And they like if they don't like it, they'll shut it down. But if they like it and it serves their purpose of keeping people in, they'll accept some cultural norm. Um,
right.
and it's hard to
Yeah,
define what that is, and it's easy for them to back out, like you said. But if it exists, it's because they want it to exist.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I saw that when I was more or less on the outside looking in. I mean, I was still going to all the meetings mainly because of my kids. I want to set the example, because I thought, they have to go to the meetings and all that to have everlasting life, right? Um, but I was pretty much on the outside looking in, and I'm just like hearing. I'd be like, did he just say that? Like, holy, like the guy in the platform, he just said that. I can't believe this. And I'd look at the magazine and I'd say, I'd realize that it's written in such a way that there's a certain level of vagueness that allows for these other ideas, and they never get corrected because of what I call the white smoke factor, which is, how the Catholic Church uses the white smoke to indicate that a decision has been made about the new pope. And we always railed against that they're basically trying to convince everybody that God selected the pope. And it's not exactly what they're doing. It's more just like a communication device. But I mean, this is what my very Catholic cousin tells me anyway.
Yeah, but smoke effect. That's what we'll change this episode to be called "The White Smoke Effect" by Gary Alt.
Yeah, the White Smoke. Yeah. I like that. Tell me I have to write an album or something.
Your next album, yeah.
Yeah. But the witness version of the White Smoke Effect is just the concept, the teaching of all this stuff is due to Holy Spirit. The elders are appointed by Holy Spirit. The governing body works under God's Holy Spirit. You can't, if they ever let go of that or kind of like allow that to be to show chinks in the armor, they're going to have a big problem. Everybody's going to lose respect for the elders and everything. So they never really discipline elders. You might hear stories once in a while about a congregation that was dissolved or an elder body that was all removed. Those are really rare. And there's specific.
My elder body.
Did it really? Those are the heavy metal guys, I guess, right?
No, those are the guys in the next Kingdom Hall.
Oh, okay.
My guys, I think it was like they're all one. It was like two Bethelites and like I don't know. It's a whole. It was like a family and married in family members. They were all related to each other through marriage. All the people that were in leadership, and then the CEO came in, or the CO, circuit overseer, the leader that travels and basically is like the deacon from a Catholic perspective. Like came and wiped them out and put in new guys. Basically, just got guys from like one different guy from a different congregation 1 hour away. And then they would drive in every week to run the show because the other ones just vacated. Like they just went they just stopped going or went to another Kingdom Hall. I don't even think they go anymore. It was because I grew up with those guys. Those are like my parents' friends. Those are the people that my parents joined to become closer to because they were like family friends. And to have them wiped out was like, what's happening here? Like, why would they? We never heard why they left. We never got to talk to them. We never got to say their piece.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting how that happens.
Yeah. But those are fairly, I've heard stories like that occasionally over the years, but for the most part, what I've observed is that individual elders are only disciplined for two reasons. One is if it's a disfellowshipping offense and they actually have to form a committee, then you have the usual just three or four guys handle it. And if there's 12 elders on the body, they don't have to know the inner workings of the committee. They just accept the decision. So if the guy's disfellowshipped, he's not an elder anymore, obviously. Or if it's just a matter of like, this guy, like he's just making so many rules for the congregation, we can't stand it anymore, something like that. It's until it becomes anonymous with the circuit overseer involved, at least it was when I was in, nothing's going to happen. So you can have a guy up there saying that, I don't know, anything that I always use the example of college education, how we weren't allowed to go to college. In my experience, that's just not true. It really isn't. It never was true in the congregation where I started out in, but I saw how it was true in certain areas. And if it's true, it's true. That's what they're doing because they're not going to be called to task for it. No circuit overseer is going to go in there and say, well, we're kind of overstating what the magazine said. Let's kind of back off. And that just doesn't happen. And unless every elder on the body, and this happened with a couple of guys that were on my elder body, I saw that these guys were just outright liars, always manipulating, using emotional manipulation and bullying and stuff like that. And I get nowhere with it. And it was years later that the entire elder body caught him in a lie. And they all agreed that, he has to go. Until it's anonymous. I keep saying anonymous. Unanimous is what I mean to say. I probably said anonymous 15 times. But until it's unanimous, including the circuit overseer, nothing happens. So the way the magazines are written is this is why we're so happy. It's because our elders are like this. And what they really should be saying is, if the elders would do this, this, and that, wouldn't it be wonderful? So they portray them as perfect. And it's like whatever they do, I guess that must be Jehovah's direction, So that's why these guys get away with making all kinds of rules up. And it's different from this congregation to that guy. So I call it the white smoke effect because if they ever said like, yeah, well, this guy is kind of talking out of the side of his face, then they would blow the whole white smoke effect. It'd be like, where's the Holy Spirit in this thing? So that's what happens. Anyway, so I just kind of got where I was on the outside looking in, and one thing led to the other. Meanwhile, I started playing again. I had already started writing songs a lot and sending tapes out to publishers, and in fact, I made a tape for Eric Clapton, and I sent it to his publisher, his producer at the time, Russ Titleman, and I got a good. And I asked permission first to send it, because you can't, you're never going to be able to get something through to these guys if you don't get permission. And they liked it. They thought it was really good. The problem was that Eric wasn't working with Russ Titleman anymore. His next album was like not even blues. It was just like, I think, his worst album ever. So it never went anywhere. But that's what I started out doing is writing songs wherever I could and recording them at home and sending them out. And then in the early 2000s, I started playing in bands again, and it was all witness bands. That was like the requirement. Like, I didn't want any so-called worldly guys in the band,
That's an interesting thing, right? Like, that's so similar to what we captured in the movie that both Anthony who's here and I was doing. Is like, well, I think, and everyone in the movie, especially with Nuclear Gopher, like, it was like the strict rule was you had to be a Jehovah's Witness to be involved in the music. And if you interact with someone who wasn't, it was kind of a pretty big taboo. You're not really supposed to do that.
Yeah. I'm not really sure what my thinking was at the time, but I know, of course, because I was in bands as a youngster, and I never did drugs. I never connected with music anyway. I did some drugs when I was very young, but most of my teenage years, I never did drugs. And there was always somebody in the band that was off, snorting coke or something, and we're like, hey, where's Vinny? Like, we're supposed to get back on. Like, where the heck is he? And, I think he's off with Henry doing another line or something. Okay, whatever. So I just thought that that's never going to work, and unless you're all on the same page. Like, being in a band is sort of like being in a marriage, where if you're not on the same page, and you never all are, there's always a difference about how often we want to play out. What style of music do we want to do? Do we want to do covers or originals or whatever? There's all kinds of and you try to do like a sort of a loose democracy, I suppose. But the fact is,
democracy work in music is a fun conversation. There's a need to be a dictatorship.
I think dictatorships are probably a little bit more effective if you have somebody that's a strong leader and everybody likes them.
Yeah.
But no, I always looked at it as like everybody should have veto power. Everybody in the band, I don't care who you are, you should be able to say, I just am not going to do this song, period. I'll be in the bathroom if you want me, but I'm not doing this song. And I think the whole band should respect that, But apart from that, it's like, well, if 4 out of 5 want to do this or that, and I'm not crazy about it, I can kind of yield a little bit. That's okay. But anyway, I started in the bands, and it was all JWs, and I don't remember the other reasons why. I remember at one point we needed a new drummer, and somebody recommended this young guy from a nearby congregation. I'd never heard of him before, early 20s, and I heard a rumor that he was sort of like on the fringes, sort of like like maybe what you call double lifer. I was like, I don't want that. I don't want that kind of stuff in the band, So I actually. We arranged a time. I think it was me and this fellow Larry, who was the bass player. He's sort of the leader of the band. Larry, he was a singer and the bass player. And we met this guy in the diner up in his town. And I just said, so how often do you go out to service? And I'm actually asking him these stupid questions in all seriousness. And I just got enough of a feel to realize that he's got enough maturity. That's okay. He ended up being a great guy and a really good drummer, very good drummer.
And he feature on any of the songs you sent me?
No, he's not on any of them. No, there's hardly anybody. But his sister, who is now my daughter-in-law, she married my son. Who at one point the band became this fellow on drums, who was like early 20s. My son, who was also early 20s, he started out as a drummer but moved up to guitar once the real drummer came along. And then the girl that was this the drummer's sister, who eventually became my son's wife. So they were all like in their early 20s, and I'm like, I don't know, 50 or something. And the bass player's like, mid to late 40s. So we kind of changed our material with a lot of 90s and aught stuff. We played Foo Fighters and stuff. Coheed and Cambria. We played a lot of pretty
That's
cool
a really
stuff.
high vocal range to do Coheed and Cambria. I'm so blown
Yeah.
away by
the bass player Larry was really into Rush, and I always thought it was Coheed and Cambria as like the new Rush, kind of similar to Geddy Lee's vocals. But yeah, he loved that stuff. He could sing. I liked his voice best when he was singing in a lower range and he was just being soft. But when he did rock and roll, he was like Axl. He kind of sounded like Axl Rose, really, actually. But anyway, so 3/5 of the band were these young punks, and we had no problems with
Jehovah's Witness punks. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
In a way, that's what I would describe myself as, and maybe like half the people in the nuclear gopher scene might even like lean that direction. Although they don't really. Ryan doesn't love that word because they were like psych rockers. How would you feel about that, Anthony?
What the label? What were we calling it?
No, like Jehovah's Witness punks.
Just being punks. Yeah. I don't know. Like who would fit that mold out of the group? Really, I guess just because we were
maybe Cindy, and maybe SP3 a bit because like that band, and then my stuff is very much in that vein, like alternative and like skate punk influenced stuff, alternative music from the 90s and skate punk. Like I was deeply into Fat Wreck Chords by Fat Mike from NoFX, and then like Punkorama, like that whole those record labels and like those universes of punk rock. It's pretty global too. Like one of the bands in that world is Swedish, and a lot of SoCal stuff, but all over the country. The Queers were a huge thing in my world. So like I was going to punk shows like from 16, 17, 18, 19. That was like my whole thing.
I never got into punk really. Like I liked like some of the Riot Girl stuff that was coming out. I guess that was punkish. I was into that.
Yeah.
Rebecca and I played loud music. I kind of look back at the stuff we played at that October Ridge. Like the lyrics to our music and the tone of our music was not very Osmond like a lot of the Nuclear Gopher stuff was. It was kind of very happy and fun.
It's an interesting concept though, like the punks, as you call them. I mean, it's almost like punk is a kind of music and a genre, but it's also maybe even more an ethos or like an attitude towards society. And that's how I think of punk more than anything. Like,
yeah.
I want to show off some of your music here. I know if you can dive in, keep going with your story. I don't want to interrupt too much, but like I also like wanted to show off some stuff. I pulled up Falling Down. Do you want to go with that one, or is there another one that like hits for you?
That's a good one. Do you want me to tell you about it, or?
Yeah, let's just like push play for a minute, and then we'll pull the volume down, and you can talk over it. But
it's not that I expected you to be around to catch me if I'm falling.
Unfortunately, like sound quality is a bit miss on.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'd always be there when you needed me. Now I need a place to hide, some warm to dig a hole that I can crawl in.
Yeah, could you give us a little background to this?
Yeah, well, there's several things about it. One, it's on the album Tribute. You could see it's got the Michelangelo painting kind of changed, and that the idea behind that is I'm the stick man, and the idea behind the album is that it's about 30 different artists, whether they're singers, musicians, instrumentalists, or writers that have most influenced me.
Okay.
And I feel like as much as I imitate these people, and I'm a kind of a product of all of it combined, I'm just a stick man. I can't hope to really be Jimi Hendrix, for example. So that's why I had it's like, God's creation of Adam is I'm just the stick man. But this song was actually a tribute to John Lennon. So musically, it's kind of like the I don't know, around 1965 Beatles sound, I guess. But this is one of those songs that I wrote while I was still in that reflected my growing negative experience with the JWs, even though it would be like, geez, I don't know, like 20 years until I start my journey out, maybe 15 years, I don't know. But the idea, it's basically the idea behind it is that I was always there to help you, and now I'm just crying. I actually made a suicide attempt back in the mid-90s, and it was because I had just stepped down as an elder, and about a year later, all these things converged, and the emotional pain became so intense because of all the things that were happening. I mean, everybody treated me so differently all of a sudden. It was like no forgiveness for anything. And the last thing I had to figure out was, how in the world can I even imagine that my 3 kids will be better off if I'm gone? Because that's what I had to convince myself, was that everybody will be better off if I'm gone. My wife, the whole congregation, everybody. My kids were like the last part of the formula, and I just couldn't figure out, how is it going to be good for them? It's going to be horrible. I don't know how, but one day I just put it out of my mind, and I just did it. I just tried to end my life, and it would have worked had my wife not come home from work early. But anyway, it took me years. After that, I didn't do music at all for like 5 years. I was just like in such a numb state of no emotion. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness, happiness, joy. I felt nothing about anything. Wow. It was years later that I just got this idea to write this song, probably from a melody I heard. And I don't know where the words "falling down" came from, but it's basically about that experience that, I was always there when you needed help. And I don't mean you, I just mean anybody in general. And now it's like, I'm screaming. I am in so much pain, and nobody gives a shit. And that's the way it is with the JWs, unless it's going to affect the kingdom or the organization or God's name or the congregation. Nobody gives a crap. The individual doesn't mean anything. Well, it took me really long to figure that out. But meanwhile, I wrote this song called "Falling Down." That's what it's all about. It's just, I need some help once in a while too. You don't know it, because I was always Mr. Strong, Mr. Broad Shoulders, and I never really cried about anything and said, "Please help me." But now I don't know what I need, but I need something, and there's nobody there, I'm sorry.
The act of writing the song affected how you started to think about what was going on in your life at that time? Did it like help you understand somehow that you need to do something or change something?
That's a good question. I think it might have helped me to kind of stay in a way, because I was very, very stubborn. I had what we call malignant optimism, where you always think something's going to improve. Like, this is the best this can possibly be right now, but it will be better in the future, even if there's no reason to think so. And I think that was part of what convinced me, is because it's an emotional outlet, and it's like, still nobody's listening. They'll hear the song and they'll like it. It's not me singing, by the way. It's my friend Jason who's singing. And they'll listen to it and think, yeah, that was nice, but nobody. There was one person who was a really good friend of mine that said, "Wow, man, it sounds like you finally wrote a song about your experience 5 years ago." And I was like, "Well, not really." But then I thought about it, and I said, he's right. I wasn't consciously trying to write about anything. I was just trying to do a song based on a melody that I had in my head. And based on that, I do a lot of stuff based on bass lines and drum beats. And I don't know if you heard that drum beat in the beginning, where it's like just an open hi-hat. It creates a bit of tension, and then all of a sudden it releases with a snare drum, and then it just goes to a regular drum beat. So that was the basis for the song, and I just had to write. And I guess it was years later that I started to put it together and realize that, wow, that was really me. Because I don't think like I said, I was emotionally numb for years after that experience. And I don't think I had it in me to write something personal, or maybe I didn't have it in me to write something personal and realize that I'm writing something personal. I'm just writing. It's like stream of consciousness kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think it helped. In hindsight, it helped. Well, I listen to it differently now. I mean, I wrote it when I was still in. It was not on one of my JW. I gave up on that after the third album, by the way. I never did another JW thing again. I just realized I got to write for whatever audience wants to listen to this stuff. But yeah, I guess a little bit at a time I realized. I mean, later on, I did several songs when I was still in. They were outright direct protests, complete protests about how crazy the organization is getting to be, especially the elder bodies in my local experience, But that song "Falling Down" is not. I don't think it's one of them. I think if that's what it is, it just was an accident, probably.
It's so interesting.
I listened to your song "Whatever."
Yeah.
Your song "Whatever" just felt like it had kind of religious tension in it.
Oh yeah. I call it an angry song. Yeah, it's not my best song. I knew it at the time, but I was just finishing the album Not for Sale to Minors, and I thought I needed one more song, and I just did a John Lennon kind of like a primal scream therapy well, I didn't do the Primal Scream in it, but that minimalist kind of a thing he had going on in the early Plastic Ono days. And it was just, I always think of one elder in particular that was driving me out of my mind. It was absolute, it was torture. And I'm not using that word hyperbolically or dramatically. It was actual torture, spiritual and emotional torture that he was putting on me, him and one of his associates. And I always think, and I was really writing about him. It's like, you just think, I'm not good enough for this. I'm not good enough for that. Whatever. I don't really care what you think. And there's a line in there that you can't really hear. You can't really hear because I kind of mumble it, but it's you think cardboard's the way. Well, that's okay with me. In other words, you think being a cardboard caricature of an actual human being that's always stoic and doesn't smile and this is business-like and this is what we call Christ-like. You think that's what everybody in the new system's going to be like? Okay, fine. But and the other line is someday you'll wake up to find you're not what he had in mind. In other words, you'll wake up to find that you're not what God had in mind when he created humans. It was so I was just really, really pissed off when I wrote it. And it's not musically, I don't think I'm just saying it's not my best song, but I stand by it because it's an expression of angst that I think the music had to be as simple as possible. Just let the lyrics take it,
Let's listen to it.
Yeah, sure.
Let me know when to pause it, or if you want to just start talking if you want to talk about it. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
You're not what I need to be.
There's the feedback.
I like it. Has that space of
Yeah.
that open space you're talking about.
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of these songs, I probably spent more time on the drum track than anything else. And the drum track sounds like nothing. I mean, it sounds like nothing. All it is a pop, 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 pop. But it changes from verse to verse. And I wanted it like as simple and minimalistic as possible because it's just anger. I just want everybody to know that this is ridiculous, So, yep, that's pretty much what it's about.
Cool. It reminds me of I started going through my journals because I want to write like a memoir self-help type thing using my when I was a Jehovah's Witness struggling with the cognitive dissonance of being in this weird thing that I don't really agree with or feel comfortable with, but also being in music and trying to express myself. And I have all these lyrics I was writing to songs I never made, but like poems and lyrics of this kind of thing. Like, you think this, you think that, you're attacking me. And it's just like me railing against some elder who said some crazy thing to me.
Yeah.
It like really resonates with me. And I'm actually curious about, because I want to put like a soundtrack to this book I want to write.
Okay.
Which could be a good song to put in there for a song I didn't write, but like similar vein of like the similar kind of frustrations.
Right. Cool. Yeah, what's interesting is that, of course, we change over time. Like, I don't really care about, what these guys did. It's like 30, 20 years, whatever the heck it was. Like, whatever. I'm done. And I kind of pity them in a way. And actually, the guys that were on my committee that just disfellowshipped me, I'm thankful that they just made that decision because I never would have done it. I'd probably still be miserable as could be. So, it's part of life and it's who I am. So I'm like, whatever. But it's interesting how a song is, it's always going to, especially if you've recorded it and it's available on the market, it's always there the way you created it. But the meaning can kind of change over time, And I found that with some songs that I wrote that were Bible influenced, actually, they were influenced by my JW beliefs, that I'm like, well, what do I do now? I mean, do I forget I ever wrote it? or can I just sort of change the meaning in my mind, or even maybe rewrite the words? But usually I just sort of change the meaning in my mind. I'll just give you an example. Not that I want you to play this one, but there's an example of one song called "Old Friends" that I wrote years ago, and it was about my friends at the time that I considered my core friends. And this is when I was really struggling with the JWs in general. But these are my core friends that I could count on for, expressing anything, asking questions, depending, leaning on them, and then they were the first ones to drop me. Before I was even disfellowship, they were the first ones to drop me when they heard a rumor that my ex-wife made up. And I thought, well, I don't really have any old friends that I'm interested in anymore, So years later, I pulled it out of my butt because I was going to a not a funeral, but a little gathering. I don't know, like a little memorial service for a friend that died. And I wanted to sing that, and I thought, somebody that was a good friend of mine from the radio station I worked at said that, well, old friends don't have to be old friends. It could be new friends that feel like old friends, like people you've known for a couple of years. And it's like, wow, I feel like I've known this guy for 40 years,
I love
and
that.
So that's what
that's really good advice, actually.
Yeah. So I didn't change a word of it. I just changed the way I feel about it when I sing it. And I changed the meaning of it. So even that song, Whatever, it's like, I don't feel that angst anymore. I mean, what do I care about? They were just doing what they thought was the best way to do things, which still blows my mind that they thought they were right. But,
right.
So it's amazing. I don't know. And I found that with, I've been listening to Wesley David's stuff because I want to do an interview with him this coming week or so.
Oh, yeah. You should talk about your channel that you took over and now that you run. That's an interview that's coming up that's involved in that bubble and how we actually met each other, right? Like you're an admin for Shane Metchen's old group in New Zealand, right?
Right. Which is called Life After Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
So Shane started it, and he sort of bowed out at some point because it's just not consistent with his goals in life anymore. He wants to kind of move past it.
He's doing a lot of activism right now on the legal side in New Zealand. So he's like focused on the activism and making change on the legal human rights side of things and doing legal court battle interviews and stuff. It's like he's doing important work. But he did a really cool thing that Ryan Sutter got involved in, and so did like a bunch of artists and musicians around the planet. It was like him and his daughter and his daughter's good friend, lifelong friend. They all got out of the Witnesses, and they did like a former Witnesses music world tour, and they did it like for 24 hours or something crazy. Where they went to like a new time zone every hour with a new artist. It was so cool. I loved that concept so much. And Ryan played.
Yeah, I participated in that. I was living in Montana. Okay. I was in Montana at the time. And she actually did a song with me. Emma Jade, his daughter, actually did a song, which is completely XJW. I very rarely write stuff about the JWs or XJWs, right? Because it doesn't mean anything to me. But this is one I heard something on the radio that kind of made me think of I don't know. There was sometimes I hear a song on the radio, like in the background at a restaurant or something like that, and I can't quite hear it. So I hear it wrong, and it gives me an idea how to make it different. So I'm not trying to improve on their song. I'm just kind of taking the idea that I heard incorrectly. So that happened on the way home from work one day. I just wrote this song called "Wake Up," and Emma Jade sang it. So I was on that thing, and I did my songs, and then Emma did a song where I think I did a video of me like playing the guitar and the violin. I don't actually play violin, but there's a violin solo, and it's like pretended like I was playing the violin. And then she sang it live, I think, on that show. It was really, really cool experience. So wake up, and it's Emma Jade is basically the name of the artist on it, but I'm kind of on there because CD Baby makes you put your name on there somewhere. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Is there any other songs you wanted to hit? Because Anthony went through some of them, and I have them all queued up. I got Bleed for You, Spin, Never Ending Always, Wake Up. Oh, you just mentioned Wake Up.
Yeah.
Back
you can play that if you want. Yeah.
Okay.
Back in the Free World is an example of one that I just changed the meaning because it was.
Wake up, truth about the truth unchain my mind. Shake out little triggers melting over time. I'm free and I'm me, good enough to be more than I was led to believe. Worth thrilling round.
Yeah, it's really on topic, like specifically about the exit, right?
Yeah.
I don't care what they can't see.
Yeah, and she was a pleasure to work with. I mean, she lives in New Zealand. I was living in Montana. So, and I didn't even have a recording space really, but I just needed something to put a guitar track down. The rest you can do directly into the board. And then she just, I don't know what kind of setup she had, but she just did the vocal track and emailed it to me, and I mixed it in.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I got a violinist to play the violin solo.
Where's the violinist at?
It's probably coming up in a minute.
No, I mean, where are they from?
His name is Ian Cameron, but he calls himself efiddler.com. So that's a website, efiddler.com. And yes, it's good to know about this guy. If you ever want a violin track, you just send him a MIDI file with what you want him to play, and
Cool.
and he does it, and he sends it back to you, and he's not expensive. I've used him several times. He's really good, easy to work with.
So this came up last night. A woman, I believe, out of Australia. Her name's Kate Tempo. Have you heard of her? She's an expert.
That sounds familiar.
Musician. And she wrote me. She's like, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody who can do some tracks, music tracks remotely, and she wants to collaborate. She wants it to be an ex-Jehovah's Witness artist." And I thought of there's this woman out in, I think, Virginia or North Carolina. But you might be a great musician for this because you have a more well-rounded and you play a lot of different instruments. She's looking for collaborations with ex-witnesses, and I think it's a really cool concept.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I'll definitely connect you.
Yeah,
I wonder
that'd
if
be great.
like maybe this hub of Witness Underground and your project with what's the Moving On? Is that the name of the channel again? Your channel?
Oh no, Life After Jehovah's Witnesses.
Life After. That's right. Life After Jehovah's Witnesses. Our groups are so aligned with like your music background and like the idea of life after, moving on. That like we can like we create like a music hub where like all the artists and musicians know that you can plug in and tap in and like ask for, hey, I have this track I'm working on. Anybody want to like help me on it? Kind of collaborative openness, and then make like real business deals where, like you said, like this violinist, for example, he's great to work with, and you thought he was affordable. Like obviously, like your time and your art is worth something, but like you can make those deals yourself within the community that we're kind of carving out of the world here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great thing. I mean, if I lived in New York City, I suppose it'd be a endless resources, or Nashville or something like that. But like I'm living in South Carolina or North Carolina now, and it's a nice music community. But I'm like, there's a song that I wrote several years ago that has nothing to do with the JW experience, but it just was, I immediately thought this is an Earth, Wind, and Fire song. I need a complete horn section. I need a really cool singer with like a kind of a contralto kind of voice, hopefully. Like a male, probably. I need all this stuff, and I can't. When I lived in England, I was looking for it. I thought I found a singer, and then that fell apart. Now, where I'm living in North Carolina, I think I found a horn section, but I'm always missing something, and I've just never gone into a studio and done. And I recorded the bass line, I guess, at an actual studio, but I probably lost it by now. But
where are you at? Where are you at in North Carolina?
I'm sorry.
I was going to ask where you were at in North Carolina.
Yeah, Wilmington.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's got a pretty nice music scene. I mean, when I first came here, I didn't know where I wanted to live when I came back from England. I had no idea. I just knew it probably should be the East Coast because my elderly parents live around the middle of the East Coast. And a friend of mine said, "Why don't you come and stay with me and you can check it out?" And first thing I checked out was the music scene. I don't care about restaurants and laundromats and gas stations. It's like, whatever, everybody's got that stuff. I need to know if the music scene's good. And I went to a couple of open mics like right away, and I found out what I needed to know. That's all I need to know. I can live here, so yeah, that's where I'm at. Sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I found a couple of guys at an open mic that I was really impressed with. And he liked what I did, which was strange to me because I thought what he did was a lot better than what I was doing. But I brought an electric with me that night, and I just decided to do some Jimi Hendrix type of stuff that I do, and so it's sort of not loud, but sort of distorted, and he thought it was great. I don't know, whatever. Okay. All right. But I thought what you did was great. So we're trying to get something together now. He's I don't know if I mentioned he's from Venezuela. And that's what it's interesting about it, is that he's singing what sounded to me like, I hate to use the word American, because if he's from South America, he's from America, right? But when we say American, we usually
the original American.
It's just, I hate that.
Yeah, we're misusing the term in USA.
Yeah, to me, it's incredibly chauvinistic, but U.S. soul music is what I thought he was playing, but it's all with Spanish lyrics. I'm like, what the heck? I don't recognize the song. I don't think it's Otis Redding or Sam and Dave, but it sounds familiar, and I just was fascinated. So we're trying to get something together. We're looking for a bass player and a drummer, But I wasn't going to move here because I could work anywhere. I could find a bed anywhere, but I want a place where we can do some decent music.
That's an important question about where. I always tell people
I was in Asheville, North Carolina.
Hmm.
Go ahead.
Oh, I keep coming in and out. But I was in Asheville, North Carolina, and there's a lot of people that played music, but it was like the only music we can play is like stuff that tourists will give us money for. So, what do you play? Oh, I play the washboard and the spoons, which is cool, but it was just that kind of scene. It's like, what can we play for tourists?
Yeah, there's a woman in North Carolina I want to share and shout out to, and I can't remember her name for her artist name at the moment, but she made a song that actually she moved from folk, and she's an amazing folk artist in North Carolina, XJW, Mama something, and she made a song that actually, if she moved to like full analog synthesizer for this new song, it's called Trauma Llama Ding Dong.
Okay.
It's so funny. And it's actually a really great banger. Like, I actually think it's hilarious and a good song. But she did a ton of stuff out there, and she just moved from, I think, Asheville to like the coast. We were talking a couple months ago, so she's probably settling in. But since you're in that region, you need to like definitely get in touch with her. I'll connect you after, and I'll put her.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah. You just reminded me of something. I'm not sure why, but at some point, if possible, I'd like to talk a little bit about the value of I don't want to say music therapy, because it's I can't really say I've gone through music therapy, but how it's helped with neuroplasticity and things like that. How
please,
it's helped.
Go for it. This is it.
Oh, you want me to go for it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I discovered this. I discovered this in earnest quite recently. I've always kind of knew that music helped me get out, partly because all of my music associates became fast friends, all these so-called worldly people that I already knew from the radio station. And now all of a sudden I was like tapping into them and spending more time with them, even sleeping over this one guy's house a bunch of times. And that helped me in logistical ways, in practical ways. But also just keeping music in front of me all the time, I'm convinced helped me to be more flexible mentally, to accept new ideas and accept the fact that maybe my old ideas are not correct, or adapt to things. And so the neuroplasticity, I had an experience a couple of years ago that was really very difficult. It was actually a case of actual gaslighting, and I didn't recognize it as that. It was more like just arguments that came out of nowhere that were about things that were just absurd, just like an unbelievably absurd accusations that couldn't possibly be true in any universe. Like logistically, they were not even possible. And so information was disappearing, and things like that were happening. And there was one day that I was convinced that I had lied about something, and I was like, why would I do that? To this person that was so important to me. And I realized that it was because of a phone call that I said I had made in the morning that my phone didn't show I made the call. I said, wow, I don't know why and I wasn't allowed the time to figure out what the heck's going on. So fairly recently, and also at work, there are times when my memory is not as good as I would hope it to be, and I have a job that requires a pretty good memory. And very recently, all of a sudden, I started to remember some things that I remembered the thing with the phone call. It was because it was a conference call. It wasn't with the person that was a family member. It wasn't directly with them. It was a conference call with the financial company I was working with. And oh yeah, my phone did, but I wasn't even allowed the space to figure out that was what happened, So it was this. So I was like really kind of losing my memory and losing my mind, and I started to believe that I was this bad person that told this mammoth lie, And so just recently it happened that I just realized that these memories are coming back, and I'm making sense out of it. And I right around that time I did it. I started doing a piece on neuroplasticity and how music can help that in ways that nothing else can. Even learning a new language won't do it the same way. And then I thought, like, why, if that's what's happening with me, what was different about this last year that I've never experienced before? Well, that was a time when I was living in England, and I really had nothing to do most of the day. So I spent a lot of time with musical pursuits, going to jams and open mics and doing busking and playing with this particular guy that was a harp player and a singer. And at one point, I was going to a jazz jam, and I've never really been good with jazz on the guitar. I could play it on the piano, but on the guitar, it's like a different thing. And I was like not really fitting in well with what was going on, because it was kind of like I was always relegated to like the bottom of the heap, like the guys who were just going to play the blues, and it wasn't working, So I decided to ask this young player. He was like in his early 20s or maybe mid 20s, like half my age, but he's a really good jazz player and a real humble guy, and which is to me very important. And he offered a guitar lesson. I said, sure. So I gave him the equivalent of, I guess, about $40, and he gave me a guitar lesson, and I learned things that I kind of already knew. I just didn't really realize. I didn't, know how to put a label on them. But he also taught me in one guitar lesson, he taught me at least 3 very key things that are really, really important for playing jazz mainly. And so from that point on, now I have to practice, So I'm doing this new thing. It's not just playing the same old music I've always played. It's a new thought pattern. It's totally new stuff. And I'm playing jazz and I'm playing soul, and I still play these tunes and everything. And I really credit that for the fact that I've had some memories that have just come back all of a sudden. And I mean like constructive memories. That they might be happy or they might be difficult, but they're constructive in that it was like I figured out the gaslighting thing, and I was like, okay, I'm done with that, So I think that music, and that's why I was really, really fascinated with your Witness Underground project and the whole nuclear gopher thing, because the main thing I was trying to figure out was like the timing of it all, and in terms of timing in their individual lives, were they all witnesses trying to get out, or just half in, half out, or was it afterwards, or whatever? And the answer is that it's all the above,
depending on who you're talking about and when.
Yeah, right, exactly. And obviously their music has changed. It's not all like, especially if they've been out for a while, they're not continually writing songs about how miserable life was when they were JW. Even when they were in, they weren't necessarily writing songs about that, right. which is typical of a person who's a total person. Your life isn't just about this latest breakup with a girl or something. Your life's about bigger things than that, And so I was just fascinated with that whole thing. I wish I was around earlier and younger, maybe, so I could have participated in it. But I just see that as so important, and I recommend it. And I like I said, I did this whole piece on neuroplasticity, and it's not so much to tell people you got to take up the violin or something, or take music theory lessons. If you can, that's great. But the point is to challenge yourself to new discoveries. Mm-hmm. Like if you're the kind of person that says I never liked that Mozart stuff, well, try it. Just try, just mm-hmm. do it again and try it with an open mind. And you don't have to like it; it's okay. Or jazz. There's people that'll say that jazz is too crazy, whatever. Okay. So in the video, I say, why don't you listen to Ella Fitzgerald and Joe Pass? That's not hard to listen to. It's songs, but it's jazz, and it's So I really think it just creates new neural pathways and reinforces certain connections, neural connections.
Do you think it has to do with listening to the music, or actually like writing, trying to make it, trying to replicate it, trying to make your own thing?
I think it can be that. But what I talk about in the piece I did also is how actual music therapy that I learned about from looking at the stories of what's her name, Gabby Giffords, who was a U.S. Congressperson in Arizona, and she was shot in the head by well, it wasn't a stray bullet; it was somebody who was trying to kill people, I guess. And it obviously destroyed part of her brain. I mean, the bullet went in, like, I don't know, somewhere near one of her eyes and went through the back of her skull and out the back.
Wow.
So obviously it destroyed part of her brain. And that doesn't fix itself. But with music therapy, because they found out that she had been a French horn player when she was younger, I don't know exactly what they did, but I think it has to do with listening to music and like becoming involved in it in some way, not just listening and saying, "Oh, this is great. This helps me sleep. It relaxes me," or "I like to dance to it." But some level of involvement, whether it's I don't know, like shaking a tambourine when you hear a certain thing happen, that would be the simplest form, you know. But so I don't really know what the answer to your question is in a complete way, because the therapy that I've read about, I mean, they've used it not just on Gabby Giffords, but also on anybody that's got like dementia, which could be because of a brain injury, or it could just be because of age and brain deterioration, or a specific disease, or something organic. Obviously, with people that are at that point of pretty serious damage and maybe have no musical background, they're not going to try to teach them how to play Beethoven's piano sonata. They're just basically doing simple things like hitting a wood block or whatever. But I don't really know. What I say to people is, if you really want to find out more about it, do a Google search on music therapy and find a therapist if you think it's going to help you or somebody.
I feel like it's really interesting, and I think that's great advice to go.
That's so fascinating.
Go for it, Anthony. We have a delay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I just think that's fascinating. I think Gary's encouraged me to pick up the guitar again and challenge myself to learn pop country. Something I totally need.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm not sure how it works, but I just know it does. And like I said, it's not just listening to your favorite piece for the umpteenth time. It's doing something where you're engaged in a different way. You're listening to something different. Because otherwise it's not going to do anything new in your brain, right? If you're just listening to something that puts you to sleep at night.
It's a really interesting rabbit hole to dive into. And I think that this is something that has been emerging for me out of doing the news about what this project is and like why it's important, is that there is something about processing trauma through creation of art that we don't directly talk about in the film. But now that we're like, well, what is this film and why does it exist and why was it important to make? Well, it was important for me to make it because I'm a musician and I always have been since I was like 14. And I played in multiple bands. And as soon as I left the religion, I went back to music. And when I went to Vietnam, I deeply dove into music. And then I made a music film. And I was like, well, yeah, I should tell this story through music. That's a natural, obvious thing. And why did all these people make music and leave the religion? And then like, how did it help them on the way out? And like, why are they still with us? And why, I think it helped them all land. And I feel like you're pointing on something really important, which is we should probably talk to an expert and like go learn more about what this thing is so we can help people replicate it, because it worked for all of us and we didn't even know about it. We just like it happened for us naturally, or we relied on the music, we relied on the art and the creation process to land, to heal, to process the trauma without even understanding really that that's what we were doing probably.
Yeah.
In different forms too. Like Anthony went and did a lot of graphic novels and became an incredible graphic artist. And now he's working on documentaries with that as a piece of it, for example. And a lot of us made more music, and I made documentaries, and like that helped me out. So yeah, I think there's a lot here to like, we should explore as a community. And I think it's a cool topic to be able to introduce to people, even if we're not experts, like we'll go figure it out and become experts. And
Right. Yeah. I think in my case, it helped me to, and I've always been this way. Even when I was the most diehard JW, I could toe the party line. I always say I could be the biggest jackass of an elder if you want me to, because I know the rules. I can do it. But for a lot of things, it's like, no, this is not a rule. We're not doing this. This is a human being. Like for example, we're not going to have a committee meeting with this alcoholic and tell him that you got to stop drinking this minute or you're going to be disfellowshipped. You know, stupid things like that are just like, it's so obvious how stupid it is, but nobody can get that because they just know what the Watchtower says, you know? So I think it always helped me to, you know, question things that don't make sense because the party line, the Watchtower party line about music is that there is music that's upbuilding and there's music that's demonic. There's like just two kinds of music, you know? And it's like, I always knew how dumb that was. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. And like, you can't, you know, always go back to Jimi Hendrix. This is music, for crying out loud. And it's mainly blues music. It's nothing crazy. It really isn't, you know? You know, yeah, I know he did drugs and he died of a drug overdose, but that's not how it affected me. I never did drugs ever at a concert. I never listened to a record with my headphones on under the influence of anything.
Well, I hope you change that soon.
Huh?
I hope you change that soon.
Yeah. So it just helped me to realize that, you know, you can, you know, accept this body of teaching, which I did, but you don't have to accept every little little subtext. And I think that helped me when I spent the first couple of years after I was, well, first there was this 4 years of my wife's story got out and I had no opportunity to defend myself and everybody just assumed that she's right. And I lost the association of virtually everybody, almost everybody. And I was not,
assassination against you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because people believe, people will believe anything. If you're at all the meetings, you're commenting, you're turning in a field service report, you're happy, you have people over for dinner, you do all the things a good little Christian should do, and you say that, yeah, this guy, I saw him smoking a cigarette. Well, I guess he was smoking a cigarette. You know, I mean, it's obvious because so and so said so. You know,
and why would they lie? They would never.
Why would they lie? Right, exactly. You know, so that's basically what happened. And then I got this fellowship, and it was 2 years after that. And I still believe that this is the truth, even though after I was disfellowshipped, I never went to another meeting ever. Yeah, I mean, but I still believe this is the truth, and I was fine with that. I was actually happy to think all the world's problems are going to be solved pretty soon, or hopefully. I don't know if it's going to be within my lifetime or not, but at some point, everything's going to be fine. It's terrific. I don't have to be there. I'm just happy to know that. So I was okay with believing it all. I just didn't really read the magazines or the Bible anymore. But when I first finally said, it was 2 years, I guess, after the disfellowshipping, and I had the time and the resources and the desire to start researching certain teachings and facts. And it took me no time at all. I mean, I didn't.
Yeah, how does this process go? It's actually a really interesting topic that I love to get into because it's usually like, oh, one's very specific thing, and it took me 10 minutes on Google. What was your
right? Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the things I think is what I was saying before we started when I was talking about your interview with the I forget. I'm sorry, but the Mormon woman. I forget the name of the
cult of consciousness with Shalise.
Right. I think it was you making the point that part of your effort when you started to kind of relook at certain things was that you wanted to prove that this is the truth or something like that, right?
Yeah, very biased look. It's not research. It's like I want to find information that corroborates what I've been told my whole life, and I'm very skeptical of. Let me go find that information. That's not how you do research. But go on.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I did. And I remember I went to this book. Oh, geez, I forget the name of it, but it was one of the society's books that replaced the True Peace and Security book somewhere around the mid 80s or something like that. And I forget the name of it, but it had this appendix that was like 2 pages long in small type, like 8-point type or something, that was all references, citations about not 1914, but about 607. About 607 being the year that what supposedly happened in 607. That's when Babylon conquered Jerusalem, I think. Or is that when
the Romans, I think, were outside of Jerusalem? Or no, that's way before the Romans, isn't it?
No, it was
7 and 607.
It had to do with it was when Babylon destroyed Jerusalem. That's right.
Okay, yeah.
And they went into exile because it was like years later that Cyrus was Persia was the new world power, and so it was 607 was when the basically kingdom of Judah was demolished, So anyway, there were all these citations, like there must have been 40 or something, like different citations and references that indicated that Babylon's sacking of Jerusalem was about 20 years off of what Russell always thought it was, that he based his chronology on. So therefore, they're obviously wrong about 1914. And I remember this going back to when the book first came out in the mid 80s, and I read it and I thought, why are they doing this? They're basically destroying their own point. But at the very end, they make this point that when secular references conflict with the Bible, we prefer to go with the Bible. And at the time, I thought, well, all right, okay, whatever, so I'm done. But now I'm looking at it just with more of an open mind. Again, trying to prove that the truth is the truth. But I was like, wait a minute, none of these sources are contradicting the Bible. They're not talking about the Bible. They're just talking about
history.
The only thing they're contradicting is the witness's interpretation of the Bible, which is subjective. I mean, that's their interpretation. It's nobody else's interpretation. So these sources are not contradicting. So all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. They're so wrong about 1914. What else are they wrong about? And it's again, I didn't approach any subsequent doctrine with the attitude that I want to prove they're wrong. I wanted to prove that they were right, because I thought, well, all right, so let's just see what else we got in the bag here. But like one thing after the other. And I really think that it had to do, like well, I'll put it this way. I didn't go through a mourning process that a lot of people go through when they discover that, oh, if they're wrong about all these doctrines, that must mean they're wrong about the paradise. Now, what does that mean? That means I'm not going to see my mom again, like I always thought I would, or I'm going to have health, these health problems I'm having are never going to go away, or whatever. And you go through an intense period of mourning because it's the death of your belief system. That didn't happen with me. I was just like, oh, okay, I'll figure this out at some point, what the real truth is. But right now, at least I know that this is not the truth. I really think that it's my musical background that did that, because that's what
made you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I never actually thought of that or heard of that before. That like the influence of having a lifelong of like working with art and music would soften the blow of having your entire worldview, realizing that it's not true or not real, or that you've been lied to, or that everyone like that whole like the whole rug being pulled up from underneath you realization moment. That's fascinating. Could you elaborate on that? Like, why do you think that helped?
I just think that I'm very much a left brain and right brain kind of person, because I could be very analytical. I was a computer programmer for years, which is a creative job, but it's also a lot of logic, which is left brain stuff. I think my hemispheres work together well or something. And I'm not sure why, because we don't like deliberately make neuroplasticity happen. But when we do things like with music and maybe language and other things, it's a consequence of it. And I just think that it kind of created in me an open mind that, I don't know, Scott, like, I don't know if that's the way I would have been anyway. I never know. Mm-hmm. Like I always say that the JWs taught me by example where I was. A lot of people would have a different experience than me, but they taught me how respecting people of other races is just like common sense. It's like we're all equal, it's so getting along with people and not judging them. I don't know if I might have come to those conclusions anyway, because of music, because my earliest music memories are like the Temptations and the Supremes and Smokey Robinson. I love
Smokey Robinson. We had a cassette of Smokey, and I listened to it 100,000 times. Yeah,
I'm just like, these are. I was just watching the Temptations movie last night, in fact, and Smokey is one of the characters. And I just, even though I was taught a version of ignorance and hatred, ignorance, fear, and hatred, it comes in that order. First, you're ignorant, then that leads to fear, and then you hate what you fear. I was kind of taught that, because I grew up in an all white area, and it was still pretty segregated pretty much in New York in those days for different reasons than it is now. I mean, it's not so much segregated now, but it was different from like the South. You know, it was more because the realtors just wouldn't show houses in white neighborhoods to black people. It was that simple. They just kept them out, you know. But I just never accepted those mores. I always thought I didn't know black people growing up until maybe a few people in high school, because they kind of shipped them in from other like less privileged areas because we had some good tech programs and they wanted to give good students an opportunity. So I got to know a couple, but it wasn't until I really became a witness that I really was exposed to the African American community. And I immediately thought, this makes sense. These are good people. They're warm people. We're emotionally open and honest, you know. And I just thought, I don't know if that's all black people, but it's enough for me, you know. And I think it has to do with my earliest musical experiences, because you look at Miles Davis and you know, Bird and all these people, and they're making great music, and it's like, who cares what the color of their skin is? Who the hell cares, you know? And so I think that affected that area of my life, but I think it created an open-mindedness that like elsewhere in my community, you just didn't find it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept it to myself, I suppose. And I think that it also opened me up to new ideas in terms of maybe these things that I believe for like 40 years now is actually like 40 years. And that's a lot of years to be completely convinced of something and then all of a sudden say, let's peel back the onion and get rid of that, you know?
Yeah.
I just think that's what it is. I think it's the neuroplasticity that we create, that it becomes a natural thing to allow new pathways in your brain to I mean, it also gets to cognitive dissonance, which it was kind of part of the thing I did. But cognitive dissonance, we usually think of it as the inability or unwillingness, like serial unwillingness, to accept new ideas that conflict with the old ideas that are cherished or that we just believe. Well, it works both ways. It's also, if we hear new things and we're accepting them because they're the complete opposite of what we believed all our life, but now we hate the organization that taught us that stuff. So therefore, everything they taught us, and you know, like, I mean, because there are some moral precepts that I think are good that the witnesses espouse.
They say it. They might not always practice it, or they only practice it in certain, within each other or something.
Right, exactly. But if you absorb those ideas, and I see, I always thought that we were spot on, even with morals. I mean, except for, you know, like I said before, things that happen in my bedroom. Who the hell's business is that? I never accepted some of those ideas, but I'm just, in terms of the way you should treat people, I saw a lot of things that were wrong. Yeah, but in general, I thought that, like, even the way women are treated in the organization, we all know now that it's just horrendous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
How marginalized.
They're subclass citizens in every possible way. Yeah.
But at the time, I accepted the fact that, all right, they're not second class citizens. I wasn't thinking that. But all right, so they're not supposed to be elders and things like that. I accepted all of that. But at the same time, you know, I kind of knew that we were kind of like a little bit on the fringe with it. Are you still there, by the way?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay, because your picture just went away. That's all right. But I don't know. I guess I'm going off on a tangent. But the point is that I think it's possible to accept that body of doctrines and be completely closed-minded about anything different, but still have that openness in the back of your mind to accept new things when it's time to. And that includes not just, again, not just rejecting new information because it disagrees with the old, but rejecting new information that actually doesn't make sense, and not accepting it just because it disagrees with the old information. Sometimes it's like an intersection, or there's somewhere in the middle that makes more sense. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I think music has just always made me a thinker. You know, I don't know how else to explain it.
Sorry for the technical difficulty at the moment.
Okay, all right.
Actually, can you still hear me on the nice mic? Yeah. So, thank you for sharing all of that. I think it's fascinating, and I want to dive more into it. Anthony, do you have anything you wanted to say? Sorry, I left you backstage there for a minute.
Oh, it was fine. I had a walk. Yeah, just I'm so thankful and happy to hear Gary's story, learn more about his community that he's involved with, and I'm really happy to learn that bit about neuroplasticity and the power of music in that. I think that's really awesome, and wanted to personally thank him for his generous gift of the violin to whomever's going to receive that. That's really amazing. So I hope that they can learn something new, or if they already play the violin, rock out.
I think I've got a picture of it here somewhere. I don't know where it happened to it. It's over there somewhere. Anyway, it's over on my couch. But anyway, yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that, so I'm waiting to hear about it. But yeah.
What music do you listen to these days, or what's in heavy rotation at your place right now?
It just depends. I mean, there's basically two radio stations that I listen to. One is classical, and I find that classical stations nowadays are not constantly playing, Beethoven's Fifth and Ravel's Bolero, ad infinitum. They're usually playing stuff that's probably, there's a good reason why it was never as popular as those things, but it's good. And it's just composers you never heard of before. A lot of American composers, because America's history with classical is not as impressive as Western Europe and Russia. I don't know. And then there's a station they call the Penguin, which is kind of a lot of Americana. I guess I go off on binges. I just did a show this past weekend that was like the celebration of the 45th anniversary of the band's The Last Waltz. And so I played on a bunch of tunes up in New Jersey. And so I've been listening to The Last Waltz like crazy, like the band and all those people, Joni Mitchell. And in terms of new artists, I'm not, well, some of the stuff that Scott has told me about is what I've been listening to really. And I find it very refreshing, because I really think, and I'm not trying to sound like an old fogey or something like that, but I really think that a lot of the new music I hear is just not interesting. It's like the same chord progressions over and over again, like the 1-6-4-5 or 1-6-2-5. I can't believe how many songs use that same chord progression. It just blows my mind. There's nothing about these songs and I'm talking about whatever pop music means today. It's just not interesting. Now, there's this one song by Wesley David that every time I listen to it, it's like it's the first time I listen to it, because it's like hearing a joke for the 10th time. It's not funny after the second or third time, but you still like listening to it for some reason. But every time I listen to this song, I'm like, that chord progression is so cool. It's a song called Glass Half Full, I think it's called. You familiar with that? Yeah, it's just got this really subtle one thing he does. It's got a really pretty melodic sound with the way he's playing the chords and the harmony that he's gotten going on in the guitar. But then so the song's in E, and when he goes to an A, which is a pretty standard chord in that key, he's playing, and I'm gonna sound technical. I apologize to anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, but he plays an A augmented, which is just an A with an F instead of an E. Okay, whatever. So the fifth note is up a half tone higher, which creates a kind of dissonance that has to resolve somewhere. And you don't usually use the chord the way he did. But it's so cool, because the melody is the F and the C sharp, but he's playing in E. Yeah, let's hear it.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, that's nice. It's nice harmony, right? Mm-hmm. Right there. That is so cool.
Saw a disaster, then I tried YouTube. I found myself in a photograph. Once drunk and blinking red eye in the flash.
Yeah, it's a really good song.
Yeah. And then it just repeats, and nothing really changes. But I mean, the lyrics change obviously. But right there. I mean, do you hear it? It's so unusual, and it's like the first time I heard it, it was like it caught me by surprise, and I was like, "What?" And I've got a really good ear. I've got perfect. I don't know if I have perfect pitch anymore, but I've got relative pitch, and I can hear something and say, yeah, he's playing a C sharp minor 7, whatever. But with that, I was like, I gotta pull my guitar out and see, it's just it's. I'll tell you another thing really quick. The other day at work, I got stuck the whole day listening to what sounded like to me as like a Spotify created list of the worst of the 70s. It was just awful, just all kinds of junk. And most of the songs I'd never heard of before, but they sounded very 70s-ish. But they had no imaginativeness to them. The melodies were garbage. The chord it was just, you can never say melody's garbage, but it wasn't doing anything for me. Every once in a while, I would hear a song where they threw in a weird chord change that didn't make any sense according to any kind of rules, which who cares about the rules, but it really seemed to me like they did it just for the sake of being different. Like, we don't want to just do a 1-4-5 for the 100 millionth time. Let's do something different. It was just for the sake of being different, but had nothing satisfying about it.
Yeah.
I'm listening to this stuff all day, and I'm losing my mind. Then when I hear this song by Wesley David, I'm just like, that is just a cool little chord change. I'll never get sick of it.
Yeah.
So
he's amazing. He's actually.
So I'm just answering your question. What are you listening to? I like stuff that challenges me. That's it's maybe a little different. There's a reason to listen to it. It's interesting. It's a little different. I said that already, I guess, but not just for the sake of being different. Like, let's throw in something that's totally incongruous just to throw them off. Anyway, so that's kind of what I listen to, is stuff like that.
I'm gonna find out where he did this graphic art. Like, I actually hadn't seen the music video for this.
Yeah,
that's good.
I watched this either. I downloaded it and I listened to it in the car, basically.
I have a 2-part question for Gary to wrap up my questions.
Okay.
So a 2-part question for you, Gary. Who's your favorite Beatle, or who's the best Beatle, and why is it Ringo?
You missed the No, you were here for the opening. He was talking about the Beatles. Actually, what's your laptop sitting on?
Yeah, it's sitting on the Sgt. Pepper box set because I needed it to get it up a couple of inches.
So funny.
Yeah, sorry guys, not mean to tread on the holy ground, but yeah. Well, you're not serious. Do you really want me to tell you who my favorite is? Or are you just joking? Obviously, I was joking, but no, the Beatles to me were they're timeless. I mean, now you can listen to some of their really old songs and realize that it just belongs in the 60s pretty much. But so much of what they did, like the whole Abbey Road album, it could have come out yesterday. It's just I don't think there'll ever be another Beatles, really. They just had such an incredible impact on the world in general. So you have a little bit more. The younger generation is a little more likely to have never heard of them before. Once in a while, you run across somebody that's like, yeah, I've heard of them, but like, who are they? But I tell you, when I worked in a charity shop in England for a while, and of course that's where the Beatles are from, and we would put on certain music just for background, and I noticed that whenever I put it, there was one Beatles record. It was the one called One. It's like all their number one hits. When I put that record on, people would walk in just bopping around and singing, and I don't care if they're 16 years old or 60 years old. It just knocks me out. And I'm playing, the Jam and whatever else we had available. We didn't have a lot of good stuff, but like Bee Gees and I don't know, whatever else, like hits of the 80s or whatever. And whatever, people are grooving to whatever extent they can. But when I put the Beatles on, it's like it's universal, man. It just never stops. They just know all these songs,
Mm-hmm.
Great.
I heard something recently that.
Oh,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I am gonna lose my music cred, but the way I got introduced to the Beatles is we had this video game Rock Band thing.
Okay.
And they had a disc that was just nothing but Beatles, and you played along on a plastic guitar and plastic drums. That was my first exposure to the Beatles. So I'll just admit that. But I really like some of the songs.
That's cool. Yeah. Now it's funny you mentioned that. What who's your favorite and why is it Ringo? It's pretty funny because he's probably the most maligned of them. Like everybody thinks, yeah, he's not a good drummer, but I'll defend him all day long. For what they needed, he was the perfect drummer. There was nobody else that would have done it the same way. And I think the best drummer ever is I usually don't say the best anything when it comes to music because I don't see what it has to do with anything. But with a drum, with an instrument that's kind of technical, like the drums, it's a little easier to kind of pigeonhole somebody and say they're great or better or whatever. I personally think that there's never, ever going to be another Buddy Rich. He's just so amazing. He's like superhuman, or he was superhuman. So, but put Buddy Rich in the Beatles and see how that works. It'd be hopeless. They wouldn't have had a hit, So it's all relative. But anyway. But on that tribute album I did a tribute to each one of the individual Beatles.
We had a guy.
Sorry.
We had a guy in our Kingdom Hall, our congregation. We had a guy in our congregation. His actual name was Richard Starkey, but we didn't call him
really?
Brother Ringo at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I'm probably going to have to jump off the conversation because the internet here is kind of chopping out. But I just wanted to thank Gary again. And I really enjoyed this conversation and what you had to offer. So cheers, guys. Be good.
We should.
And if people are watching this later, back this thing we're doing.
Yeah. Thanks, Anthony, for showing up. Appreciate it. We're going to wrap up soon here. I was thinking about doing one more song of yours, Gary, to close it down. And thanks, Anthony, for hopping in. I put up Bleed for You, but also there's another song which I like the title, the cover art of it is called Art of Survival. Spin. Do you have a preference for what when we close the episode on?
Oh boy. Well, I like Bleed for You better. It's kind of it's a bit punkish, but it's got a lot of great harmonies. It's got sweet singing and stuff, but it's punkish and it's got a lot of guitar noise that you can't really detect. But I used like every effects pedal I had and made a big mess out of it. Okay. Deliberately. But again, both of those songs were from when I was still in. Oh, wow. I'll tell you what Spin is about, basically, so that if you want to listen to it, later, it's basically about how they spin everything. They just, they've got an answer from everything. And a spin is basically a lie, So it's just, I got really tired of the crap I was hearing from the elders, especially the guys that worked at Watchtower Farms. They'd come to us and say all this stuff. But anyway, the Bleed. Oh, you're going to play that? Okay. Well, all right. Can you I was going to say Bleed for You is basically based on two things. It's two different ideas that somehow merged. But it was basically inspired by the torture that the elders were putting me through, which we didn't really discuss, but in a nutshell, it was that I wasn't an elder anymore. And at one point I wanted to be again. It was like 10, 15 years later. And I was a ministerial servant. And I asked them, what can I do to reach out? What can I do to qualify for something? And they gave me this unbelievable BS answer. And they eventually said that I was this and I was that. It was just basically torture. So the song is all about, like, when is this going to stop? But it's also about, hey, again, it's like I was there for you. You're my reason why I've been doing this all these years. Mm-hmm. So I'll let the song speak for itself now.
All right. We'll crank up the volume.
Look for the reason, waiting blindly. I must be smoking hope, high on a pipe dream, trying to get through, hanging on to end of the road for you, leave for you, leave for you. You keep me breathing, pumping a veinful. Oh, it's painful to see you cry. Don't wonder how I keep on going. it's knowing you were my wife for you, me for you, me for you. Painting the colors, the gift of projection, reflection of your heart.
That was really cool. Love all the layering in that one.
There's a lot going on with that guitar sound. I've got it.
Yeah.
If I could ever play the isolated guitar track for you, you'd be amazed at how dirty and noisy it is. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I was just using every effects box I had, you know.
Yeah. Did that sound quality come through okay? I know StreamYard kind of garbles it.
Yeah, it gets kind of flangy, but that's all right. Yeah. I mean, you know, if you can look at it, you're just playing from YouTube pretty much, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Same thing. Look it up and play it, you know.
Yeah, put the link in the chat if you can see that. But it was like sound quality is better over there. But Bleed for You, that was the last track by Gary Alt. And I feel like we're doing a radio show, which is kind of fun. I've never actually done that.
Yeah.
It's been like a lifelong dream of mine to do like a music radio show. And I guess I've created a space for that. Makes sense now. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing so much.
Yeah.
We did a double shift today with you, we're 2 hours in.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But I wanted to say thank you again for offering up a brand new violin to anyone who contributes over $100. That's like a really beautiful offer. And for sharing so much of your music with the world and also your story. It's really important. And I wish my dad could hear this episode, and he can because it's public, but he probably won't. But like you two have like the same music history, background, and love. Like you mentioned, like 7 vinyls that I grew up with because they were in his personal collection as a teenager, born in 1954. So like I feel like that would be amazing to have that kind of. And like you went to Bethel, you did the whole thing, and you're like, this isn't working. Like he's like on the track to becoming an elder, you know, or maybe he is an elder. I don't know, but like to know that like music is the thing that like draws someone out, and also just to know that it's just like they don't care about you, like you're just a machine. Anyway, it's a beautiful story. So thank you for sharing that. Is there any last words you wanted to share with everybody?
No, but I mean, this has been really cool for me because you know, is it about me and my story, or is it about music, or is it about both? I mean, I never really talk about music in any of these things, and it's already gone more positively than many of the interviews I've contributed to in the past, because they tend to get bogged down in like how I got in, how I got out, and what do we hate about the Watchtower. And I'm not about that. You know, I'm not, you know, it's all about love. It's not about hating people that hurt you. You know, it's about recovery and moving forward in love. And I just think that music, I don't think it affects everybody the same way. There's some people that are, I mean, everybody likes music, including some of the people that do bad things in the world. But I just think that if we kind of immerse ourselves in it, it can do so much healing. It can help in so many ways. So I appreciate the chance to get that message across.
Yeah, I think that's very aligned. And one of the reasons why we originally connected this summer, having a conversation about like, how can we like work together and help promote artists? So like everyone I ever worked with, I'm sending them your way to get them onto your show and talk about their music. And Wesley David, as we highlighted with his song, is a great example. I'm excited for you to also be interviewing these artists. I think that's like create a network around the world of people who are almost doing the radio show thing. Like, check out this new artist. There's this awesome message that they're sharing.
Yeah.
You can get into the nuts and bolts of the music too, which I think I'm a music appreciator, but you're like a creator on a much deeper level than I ever was, which is why I do visual arts and podcasting and not music at the moment. I love that side even more. But thanks for what you're offering. I think our messages are really aligned, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. You went deep into the beast, and now you're out to tell the story.
And it's interesting. I mean, since we met, I think one of the things I told you when we first started talking, not that long ago, was that I was kind of trying to resurrect some of these regular things that Scott Meechan, I forget how you say it, but he would do with the. What did I say, Scott?
Scott.
Did I say Scott? Yeah, Shane. I meant Shane. I'm sorry.
Shout out to Shane.
But he was doing it every week, and it was so good. And I was like, I don't have time for this. He made me the admin, and I'm like, I don't have time for this stuff. So I recently resurrected the idea of at least interviewing. Maybe I'll interview authors, and I did a couple. And I'm reading a book. Well, I was reading a book now, but I don't know. I kind of lost it. But and I thought, I'll do that. But when I talked to you, is when I thought, well, it doesn't have to be just authors. It could be musicians, and that's kind of the way it's gone. Though, like, because I talked to you and Ryan, and I'm going to be doing Wesley, and I'm more natural with that anyway. And it takes a lot less preparation because I don't have to read a whole book. The book I was reading, it's like 400 pages, and somehow I only got access to like half of it. I don't know, but anyway. So I appreciate that. I'll probably go back to the authors pretty soon, but meantime, I want
back and forth.
Yeah.
Very cool. Good luck with your show. It is one more time for the audience. Check out the YouTube group that is called
Life After Jehovah's Witnesses.
Thank you.
I'm also an admin of the Empowered group. You just look up Empowered XJWs or something like that. I am an admin. I'm not the. It's basically Robin's group, but he's got a bunch of admins, and I happen to be one of them. But I don't really, I'll post a video in both groups, but I don't really have anything to do with the direction of the group. It's just sort of like administering it and making it it keeps its sanity. But with the Life After group, I don't even have a helper anymore. I wouldn't mind, if somebody came up to the plate and decided to help. But
there you go. Call out to everybody who's listening to this. If you got this far in the interview, hit Gary Elt up for helping out on the Life After Jehovah's Witnesses Facebook group, and possibly even the show. Yeah, that'd be great. Cool. So thanks again, Gary. Really appreciate everything. Thanks for helping out with the Kickstarter. You've done a lot to help spread the word. It's been awesome. We have one day left. Tomorrow at midnight, California time is our last moment. If you want to support the artists, all the money after we hit our goal, which is like the minimum we could meet. So anything that comes after goes directly to the artists. So keep on supporting the project. WitnessUnderground.com. Everyone, you're awesome. Thanks, Gary. Okay, thank you. Talk to you soon. Take care. Okay, bye-bye.